Good morning, everyone. You're watching Breakfast Television here on City. Concussion is a hot button topic these days as the understanding grows of how serious this brain injury can be. But research underway at the University of Calgary is using new brain imaging technology to assess the damage to the brain after concussion. Here to tell us all about it for Brain Week is Professor Jeff Dunn. Good morning to you, Jeff. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So first of all, I'm just a little curious. How did you even get interested in this idea?
I do brain imaging as a research project. And we do a lot of MRI. My specialty is MRI. And my kids got into ski racing.
Oh.
And it was very obvious early on that when these kids were getting hurt, especially head injuries, there was no imaging method that could diagnose or monitor a concussion. And there still isn't, actually. The MRI, people think MRI might be the go-to, but it's not. MRI can't detect a concussion. So we had a lot of tools, we had a lot of ideas, and that got us into trying to use light in a way to measure brain function.
Amazing. So this brings us to what you've discovered. So tell us a little bit about this device and how it works.
What we do is we take advantage of the fact that blood changes color when oxygen is used. So when brain metabolizes and is active, blood goes from blue, which is the deoxygenated form, to red, which is oxygenated. So it changes color.
Okay.
The brain becomes more oxygenated when the brain is active.
Excellent.
So we shine light in and we measure the absorption of light, so the color change in the brain, and that shows us where in the brain activity is occurring and the magnitude of that activation.
Wow, and so we're seeing the viz here now up on the screen. Can you tell us exactly how it works? You've got this sort of skull cap with all these wires attached to it.
Yeah, so there you can see real data coming off the cap. This is looking at the computer screen. That cap is shining light, red light, and on the mannequin there you can see the red light going into the head. And if there was a real brain in there, some of that light would get absorbed and we'd detect the change. So again, as the brain activates, we would see it. And you could literally sit here and finger tap with that cap on, and we'd be able to see the activation patterns in the motor cortex that's controlling that part of the hand.
Fascinating. So you have this information now, but what does this tell you? What does this tell doctors? What does this tell the patient?
It's very difficult to tell how bad a concussion is or give a prediction of how that person's going, symptoms are going to evolve. Diagnosing a concussion is relatively simple because it's based on whether the brain shakes, so the event, and then the symptoms that occur after. So diagnosis is kind of taken care of, but it's very hard to tell what actually happened in the brain and to kind of individualize a person's injury. So what we're trying to do is use this to look at brain communication from the left to the right side, because it's always communicating left to right, and then measuring activity on the two sides and using that, a baseline of normative people, their patterns, and looking at how those patterns change post-concussion. Because one of the most common things that people say after a concussion is they feel foggy, they don't feel right, something is not really working well in their brain.
Right.
And it makes sense because you have these wires that are crossing from one side to the other, the nerves, the axons, and they can break.
Right. Would that help you then sort of project down the road what it might look like for these patients?
Yeah, so what we're going to do now, we just got funding from Canadian Institute of Health Research, is now that we've shown that we can detect a change in people with concussion, we have to know if we measure that change early, will it predict their outcome? So we need to get a group of people from children's that are going into emergency, and we'll follow their symptoms and what we're measuring over 3 months. We need to know how it relates to different symptoms, so we could predict, say, okay, you're going to have more problems with learning or memory, or you're going to have more problems with anxiety. It'd be great if we could do that. In fact, it would be really great. A home run would be if we could tell a brain injury from a neck injury, because often they give the same symptoms.
Right. Well, that would be fascinating. Well, we look forward to that research. Thank you so much for telling us all about it. You do have an event on Friday. Well, you'll be talking a bit more about this. Tell us quickly about that.
So down at the library, hosted by Jay Ingram and sponsored by the Hotchkiss Brain Institute, we have an evening at the library, and so that'll be good. Dr. Diebert, clinician, will be there. And the University of Calgary itself has this main program, a big initiative, the Integrated Concussion Research Project or program, run by Keith Yates. So that's bringing together all the faculty to kind of try and address the problem of concussion management, concussion diagnosis, and treatment.
And moving
so U of C
forward.
has become a big player in this game.
It sure has, and we look forward to seeing what they come up with. Thank you so much for being here, Jeff, and for your time this morning.
Okay, thanks, Leah.